We're going to expand on division properties, this time dealing with negative exponents. Um, so one thing that you need to know about a negative exponent is you're not allowed to have them, ever. So we do everything in our power to get rid of that negative exponent. So starting off here in the front, whenever you see a negative exponent, there's something we can do to get rid of it. Now we can't just ignore it, erase it, but there's a movement we can do to help change things. Whenever you see a negative, I like to circle the number and its exponent when it's negative. And we're going to do something called push to make it positive, push to positive. So when I rewrite my problem, if I were to take this n to the negative 5 power and I moved it to the bottom of the fraction, that exponent now becomes positive. Okay? The p, already a positive exponent, we're not going to do anything. We're just going to leave it the way it is. Rewrite that. P to the 4th power. And as we go through it, sometimes it helps. Let's cross things out. We know we used it. And then last, r to the negative 2. I don't like that negative. So like the n coming down, I can move this up. And when I do, it becomes a positive. Now, when I look at this, all positive exponents, good, and nothing cancels out, so we call it a day. All right, so let's do that again. When a lot of times when you see the negatives, you're going to be rewriting all over. So get ready, prepare for that. So I like to start off fraction line. We know that this has to come down. I'm going to rewrite that, v to the 3rd power. And I'm going to stick with the top layer for right now. Does the w go anywhere? Nope. Let's leave it. Did it? We did it. The x, positive exponent, leave it. Cross it out. On the bottom now, this w, it has no exponent, so it's positive 1. We leave it down on the bottom. The y, I don't like this. We're going to move that up. Y, and this time, positive 6. And the v stays on the bottom. Okay, so we moved everything, great. But when it comes to simplifying, we want to try and write as little variables and numbers in the end as possible. If I can simplify, simplify. If I can cross things out, cross things out. So now, let's start putting things together. I have one W up top. I have one W on the bottom. Something up top, something on bottom, they're the same. Cross them out. We don't even need them. My V's, I have V to the 3rd, V to the 3rd on the bottom. When you have something next to each other, those exponents, we now have to add together. That gives us V to the 6th power. We used it, we used it. X and Y, we can't combine with anything. We just leave it the way it is. X squared, Y to the 6th. There's your simplified answer. We started off with 1, 2, 3 with 6 terms, ending it with 3. We like that. Okay. So if you remember when we divided, if you have the same base, all you have to do is subtract your exponents. Now, I don't always like saying it like that because now you're going to be dealing with a negative exponent. 2 minus 5 gives you negative 3. I don't like that because I'm dealing with that negative there. So I'm going to show you 2 ways to get through this. The long way. Subtract, you get the negative, turn this to a fraction. Put it over 1. We're not allowed to have a negative exponent, so we circle, and we're going to push it to positive. On the bottom, you got that. What are we left with up top? Nothing. Everything's gone, but we need a placeholder. So you put the 1 there. That's that. That's dealing with a negative exponent. Now, I don't like that. I would much rather ask myself, where do you have more x's? I have more x's on the bottom. How many more do I have? Well, 5 minus 2. So I'm doing that subtraction in another way. I'm doing it in the reverse. But my answer, 5 minus 3, meaning I have my extra x's down here, that's where they're going. So 5 minus 2 gives me 3. Where do you have the extras? On the bottom. Kind of eliminates the whole negative thing here. All right, next, everything's lined up. Let's just simplify first. Let's see where that goes. A's, we have 1 up top. We have 2 on the bottom. Where do you have more? On the bottom. Subtract them. How many extra do you have? 1. 2 minus 1. We used it. We used it. B's, where do you have more? Up top. How many extra do you have? We've got 3. 4 minus 1 gives you 3. C's, where do you have more? On the bottom. How many extra do you have? 5 minus 2 gives me 3. And we didn't have to deal with any negatives, so I like doing it like that. All right, let's look at a complicated problem with all these. So I've got an 8, a negative 8, and a 12 in the front. I'm going to ignore them to the very, very end. I want to deal with all my variables like I've done over here. First, let's just rewrite the whole question. Negative 8 x squared. Let me do it on the bottom. Negative 8 x squared y to the 8th z to the negative power. I want to move that down. So I'm just going to kind of drop it down there. All right, so we moved everything that needed to get moved up top. On the bottom, 12 stays on the bottom. X to the 4th stays. Y now goes up because of the negative. The z stays on the bottom. Now, we're still left with a negative, this negative 8. Well, the only time we move something from the bottom of the fraction to the top or the top of the fraction to the bottom is when the exponent is negative. Negative 5, negative 7, they move. They're exponents. They're up in the air. That negative 8, it's for that number, that coefficient out in the very front. We don't want to move that unless it has a negative exponent up in the air. All right, let's start combining and see where we go from there. Again, I'm going to ignore the negative 8 and 12 for right now. I'm going to come back to them. X's, where do you have more? We have 2, we have 4. More is on the bottom. How many extra? 4 minus 2 gives you 2. Your Y's, they're next to each other. So when they're next to each other, we just have to add. 7 plus 8 gives me 15. We used it, we used it. Same thing on the bottom. Z's are next to each other. Let's just add them up. 5 and 7 gives us 12. Now, let's go one more step and deal with the 8 and the 12. So x squared, z to the 12th, y to the 15th. So each time I do this, I'm rewriting, I'm crossing out so I don't make any mistakes. Let's just pretend you've got a regular old fraction, 8 over 12. Simplify them. Well, 8 over 12, you can go 4 over 6, go one more step, 2 over 3. And we have one negative. You can put it on the top, you can put it in the front, it doesn't matter. That is using the division property of exponents, especially when you have exponents that are negatives.